Honorable President, may I have your permission to start the formal proceedings of this special investiture ceremony for conferment of Nishan-e-Imtiyaz Military upon Lieutenant General Pilot Salim Hamad Akil Al-Nabit, Chief of Staff, Qatar Armed Forces. I now invite Mr. Ehsanullah Kakar for recitation from Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير تولج الليل في النهار وتولج النهار في الليل وتخرج الحي من الميت وتخرج الميت من الحي وترزق من تشاء بغير حساب. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, say, O Allah, honor of sovereignty. You give sovereignty to whom you will, and you take sovereignty away from whom you will. You honor whom you will, and you humble whom you will. In your hand is all good. Indeed, you are over all things competent. You cause the night to enter the day, and you cause the day to enter the night. And you bring the living out of the dead, and you bring the dead out of the living. And you give provision to whom you will, without account. Sadaqallahu al-Azim.
I now request Lieutenant General Pilot Salim Hamad Akil Al-Nabit, Chief of Staff, Qatar Armed Forces, to please come forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Pilot Salim Hamad Akil Al-Nabit, Chief of Staff, Qatar Armed Forces, is an accomplished commander and a distinguished aviator. He has played a significant role in promoting and reinforcing bonds of brotherhood and cooperation between our armed forces in general and air forces of both the countries in particular. During his outstanding military career, he served as commander of the Qatar Amidi Air Force, commander of Air Excellence Squadron, commander of 11th Squadron Alpha Jet, and commander of Al-Azim Air Academy. General Al-Nabit took part in several operational missions such as the Second Gulf War, liberation of Kuwait, and Operation Unified Protector during Libyan Civil War. Ladies and gentlemen, the General has also attended several professional courses, some of which include transformation on the Mirage 2005 aircraft from France in 1997, General Training Course on PC-9 aircraft from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1998, Command and Staff Course from UK in 2001, Trainer Course on PC-21 aircraft from Switzerland in 2014, and transformative courses on F-15 in 2020 and Rafale in 2021. In appreciation of his operational and staff assignments in different ranks in Qatar Armed Forces, he was appointed as Chief of Staff, Qatar Armed Forces in October 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, the General is a sincere friend and a close brother of Pakistan. He has played a leading role in promoting and strengthening defense relations between the armed forces of both brotherly countries. In recognition of his illustrious services, the President of Islamic Republic of Pakistan has been pleased to confer the award of Nishan-e-Imtiaz Military upon Lieutenant General Pilot Salim Hamad Akil Al-Nabit, Chief of Staff, Qatar Armed Forces. Now I request the General to please come on stage and receive the award of Nishan-e-Imtiaz Military from the President of Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Honorable President, may I have your permission to close the formal proceedings of this special investiture ceremony? Yes, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the proceedings of this special investiture ceremony are now closed. Guests are invited for refreshments. Thank you all.
ईवान सदर इस्लामाबाद में कतर के मुसल्लह अफवाज के चीफ ऑफ स्टाफ को निशान-ए-इम्तियाज मिलिट्री अता करने की तकरीब का इनेकाद किया गया। सदर डॉक्टर आरिफ अलवी ने लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल सालिम हमद नाबित को निशान-ए-इम्तियाज मिलिट्री एजाज अता किया है। पाकिस्तान और कतर के दरमियान मुसल्लह अफवाज के दरमियान उमूमी ताल्लुकात खासतौर पर पाकिस्तान फ़िज़ाइया और कतर की फ़िज़ाइया के दरमियान खुसूसी ताल्लुकात के फ़रोग़ के लिए उनके किरदार के एतराफ़ में सदर डॉक्टर आरिफ अलवी ने लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल सालिम हमद नाबित को निशान-ए-इम्तियाज मिलिट्री एजाज अता किया है।
नाज़रीन, प्रैक्टिस एंड प्रोसीजर एक्ट केस की समाअत इस वक्त जारी है। आपको बराह रास्त लिए चलते हैं।
Jurisdiction or could do such a thing, which is not happening in the Supreme Court.
Which is not happening in the Supreme Court.
This also includes the Shariat Court. Shariat Court was previously dealing with narcotics cases. Then subsequently, when CNS was enacted, the jurisdiction of Shariat Court was taken away, and now it is with High Court. So it means Shariat Court jurisdiction can also be curtailed by Act of Parliament.
So, with respect to Sharia Court, now it says clause 3 of 203DD says such other jurisdiction as may be prescribed by law. Now it is saying that there is a jurisdiction which has to be conferred. With the Sharia Court, the chapter provides what matters are to go to Sharia Court, what matters can the Sharia Court see. So this is all what the Constitution is providing. So there is here,
initially all the narcotics cases that will go to the Shariat Court. But after promulgation of CNS Act, now the Shariat Court can't hear those cases, and those cases are lied to the High Courts. So it means the jurisdiction of Shariat Court has been taken away, and which can be done.
My Lord, what we have to see then is we have to examine this chapter and see whether what is provided.
This cannot be done in the case of Supreme Court.
No, it cannot. It cannot be done in the case of Supreme Court, because if you look at 185, my Lord, look at 185. Now 185, unless we read enlargement part independent of the preceding part, then does not permit any appeal coming to the High Court from either the Competition Tribunal or the election tribunals or all the other instances where appeal has been provided to the Supreme Court, because 185 there is no express authorization.
If you read it the way you're saying, then all those other laws.
ये 185 में सुप्रीम कोर्ट के ऑर्डर का जिक्र है।
सुप्रीम कोर्ट के ऑर्डर का
जी
सर, उसमें
देखिए बात ये ना, अगर आप कह रहे हैं कि जी इनलार्ज कर रहे हैं आप जुरिस्डिक्शन को, तो एपलेट जुरिस्डिक्शन 185 में दी हुई है, ठीक, उसको इनलार्ज कर रहे हैं आप, तो अब आप सोचें, आप कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के एक प्रोविजन को वहां पे कर रहे हैं, ये थोड़ा सा उसमें या तो आप सिर्फ ये बता दें कि ये जुरिस्डिक्शन ऑफ पावर कौन से हैं जो नहीं हो सकते 55 के नीचे?
My lord, when it says enlargement of
आप
jurisdiction,
रिवर्स लेना, आप तो एक्सेप्शंस पे जा रहे हैं, एक्सेप्ट सुप्रीम कोर्ट, when enlargement है, हम उसको रिवर्स में लेते हैं। आप स्टार्ट करें जहां से वो स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं कि आप पावर नहीं कर सकते सुप्रीम को, वो कौन कौन सी jurisdictions हैं जो नहीं कर सकते?
जो enlarge नहीं कर सकते?
नहीं।
So I haven't got it.
देखिए आप 55 को प्लीज जरा पढ़ लीजिए।
Jurisdiction and powers of all courts. There's a comma then. Except the Supreme Court.
So you can't create jurisdiction or create any new powers of the Supreme Court. Fine.
Reduce नहीं कर
So अब जब आप enhance नहीं कर सकते, reduce नहीं,
Enhance कर सकते हैं।
वो आप कैसे कर सकते हैं?
ये सर ये
नहीं, वो आप देखिए ना, वो तो आप कौन सी एक jurisdiction होगी जिसको आप enlarge कर रहे हैं ना?
Yes.
तो आप कौन सी jurisdiction को enlarge कर रहे हैं?
appellate jurisdiction को enlarge
यानी आप 185 में 184(3) की provision को ला रहे हैं?
तो हम ये कर रहे हैं कि because 185 में ये limitation नहीं है, because 185 में अगर ये हो कि for example 185 had said that in addition to what it
फिर
says,
देखें, फिर इसको देने की जरूरत ही नहीं थी। देखें, फिर तो आप किसी भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट की प्रोविजंस दी हुई हैं, तो आप किसी प्रोविजन को भी एनहांस, यानी फिर तो आप हमें वो, फिर तो देयर इज नथिंग लेफ्ट टू इट।
इसको इस तरह से अगर देखें, अगर सिंपल ये होता एक्सेप्ट द सुप्रीम कोर्ट एंड the entry had ended where it says authorized by or under the constitution, full stop, then you could not do anything.
नहीं, इसमें अगर मैं ऐड कर दूं कि ये जो अभी कर रहे हैं अपील, this is 184(3). So I raised this question earlier that if you provide an appeal in 184(3), it is not conferring a new jurisdiction, it's enlarging the jurisdiction of 184.
So that could be one way of looking at it, that you enlarge that jurisdiction and then you apply an appeal and there is no limitation under 185.
Where
no
there is
limitation
a
under
specific
185.
article of the Constitution providing an appeal, and that specific article is intact, it doesn't provide an appeal, then you cannot provide an appeal in another article by under the garb of enlargement. Because appeal is a separate jurisdiction.
So you read 184 and 185 together and see whether there is any limitation.
Learned Attorney
Where there is a jurisdiction which exists and you extend it.
185 jurisdiction is not a jurisdiction in the form of an intra-court appeal against an order of the Supreme Court. So there's a distinction. Now here there is already an existing jurisdiction under 184(3). That is simply being enlarged.
My lord, you read both of them together. I'll just, that's what I wanted. My lord, with this, I think one last question I have to address. Ladyship, you had a question about full
अगर आप कंक्लूड कर लें तो बेहतर होगा।
बस मैं वो फुल कोर्ट वाली बात करके yesterday Mr. Faisal Siddiqui had made submissions.
ये इसमें मिस्टर अटॉर्नी जनरल, ये सेक्शन 6 जो है, राइट टू अपॉइंट काउंसिल ऑफ चॉइस,
जी
इसका क्या मकसद है?
My lord, this is something which can easily be addressed. Now, of course, you have Order 26, Rule 6, where in exceptional circumstances you grant this power. As
नहीं, यहाँ अगर आप राइट उसको दे देते हैं टू अपॉइंट काउंसिल ऑफ हिज चॉइस, तो इसका मतलब ये है कि कोई नया जो वकील आएगा वो फुल फ्लेज आर्गूमेंट करेगा, तो जो स्पिरिट ऑफ रिव्यू है जो कि अभी तक सेटल्ड हुआ हुआ है बाय दिस कोर्ट, वो तो खत्म हो जाएगा।
This can be easily dealt with, as I was submitting, with the use. Now, my lord, with this provision,
वो तो
my lord
आपने
can.
सेक्शन 8 में लिख दिया हुआ है ना, it is to override any judgment of any court, including the Supreme Court or High Court.
उसको मैं explain
वो
भी कर
खत्म
देता
हो
हूँ,
जाता
उसको ये भी explain कर देता हूँ कि now that we with the advent of technology, एक तो ये कि transcripts बन जाती है, but let's leave that aside. With this provision in mind, my lords can suitably amend Order 26 to say require the councils to file their written briefs, for example. In addition to the pleadings, they file their written
that
briefs.
Is already given
so that
in the
will
Supreme
then
Court rules, and that depends upon the court. If feel like.
So उसको इसको अब रेगुलेट करने के लिए, फर्दर करने के लिए कि इसको कैसे इफेक्ट देना है, उसका ये तरीका हो सकता है।
इसमें तो you have given it as a right.
जी जी मैं वही कह रहा हूँ कि ये right now this is a right at one end and there is a difficulty that you have just pointed out of the court at the other end. उसको balance किया जा सकता है.
अपील किया किसी और ने, रिव्यू दायर किया किसी और
मैं उसी को explain तो कर रहा हूँ.
वो कोर्ट के सामने फिर शुरू से
मैं यही मैं कह रहा हूँ.
सेकंड अपील
मैं यही कह रहा हूँ कि then the court will go by the pleadings. वो written submissions हो सकती है. This is something which I appreciate the difficulty that you have pointed out.
Would that be a review stricto sensu or that would be second appeal?
No. I mean, if it is in review, obviously for determining the review or deciding the review, the principles of review that you have in Order 26 will apply. Now, the only difficulty that my lord has pointed out, there will be a different counsel arguing that case. I think in order to give effect to this section, Order 26.
Fresh argument of the case.
वो उसमें my lord आप Order 26 Rule 6 में ये amendment कर दें कि जी beyond written pleadings, nothing new would be entertained, and that will take care of everything.
Learned Attorney General, even if another litigant exercises the right of engaging a new counsel, he would be still bound by the same principles laid down by this court.
Yes, and
so he can't go beyond that.
So on judicial
when
side,
we allow a new counsel to come, he also stays within the limits of the jurisdiction.
He is bound by the pleadings which are before the court, and that would resolve that difficulty of a new person coming in, not being part of original proceedings. That might just
Mr. AG, it's Article 10 of the Constitution gives right to a person to appoint a counsel of his own choice. How can bar be put on a person that you should not appoint a counsel of your own choice? वो कहते हैं आज मुझे ये वकील पसंद मैं दूसरा रखता हूँ.
इसको फिर ये वही इसका जो बैलेंस है my lord, वो बैलेंस ये हो सकता है कि आप अब जैसे कोर्ट रूम नंबर 1, I don't know if it is true or not, but there is a transcript of the proceeding.
There was some sense.
I don't know.
When this rule was made, there was some sense. But with this, it will just expand the burden which is already on the shoulder of this court.
My lord, as I said, आप जो इसमें एक डिफिकल्टी जो मुझे आपके जो ऑब्जर्वेशन से नज़र आ रही है वो ये है कि नया वकील आके कोई नई बात ना करे जो पहले नहीं हुई. यही डिफिकल्टी हो सकती है इन ऑल. सो उस पे इफ रूल 26 जो रूल 6 है ऑर्डर 26
पता कैसे
आप
चलेगा? देखें ना, वही वकील आता है तो उसको तो आप ये कह देते हैं कि भैया आप पहले आर्ग्यू कर चुके हैं, नया वकील आएगा उसको क्या पता पिछले वाले ने.
So have you bind them by the pleadings which are already on the record?
अगर मजे की बात ये है कि ये वाला प्रोविजन नहीं चैलेंज कर रहे हैं, वो कह रहे ये ठीक है. वकील कह रहे हैं इधर तो हमारी फायदे वाली बात है.
Your ladyship, if I may now address that question that you had asked. It's a question that you raised from the first hearing, and it has troubled many that what becomes of that right when is a full court hearing this matter. My friend Mr. Faisal Siddiqui had also made submissions on this, so I adopt the submissions that he had made. This is not something which is which can easily be addressed because as far as a particular court is concerned, if the entire court is sitting, conceivably there can't be any appeal because there is no one left to hear the appeal in addition to.
No, but the question I think has been perhaps, with all due respect, misunderstood. The thrust of the question is not that. The thrust is that if there is a substantive right of appeal, and right of appeal is always substantive, that right vests when the petition is filed. 184(3) petition is filed, the right vests on that day. That is the settled law. Now, the thrust of the question is this. Because of this reason, and a right of appeal has to be mandatory, the power or the ability of the Supreme Court to fix, whether exercised by committee, collegium, whoever, to fix a matter before any bench of strength greater than as presently constituted 7 has been taken away, because the right of appeal, being a substantive vested right, must prevail. So this is an encroachment upon the independence of the judiciary, that no bench, full court तो बड़ी दूर की बात है, 9 member, 8 member, 10 member, 11 member, keep on counting, cannot be constituted the hands of the court have been tied, even if it is a matter of the utmost national importance. It cannot be heard as presently constituted by more than 7. This is the question. Not कि full court बैठेगी तो full court में तो 60 के अगर 60 जज हैं तो 60 जज होंगे. Well, obviously बात है. That's not the thrust of the question. The thrust of the question is, which the question has been asked by my learned colleague from day one. You are affecting the independence of the judiciary to hear matters in respect of, you put a maximum cap, nothing beyond that. You can't go beyond that. Why you created this right of appeal? इसका क्या जवाब?
और इसके साथ
can it be,
just add on to this question?
If I may just say something, can it not be very, without taking extreme positions, be very reasonably resolved by saying we haven't prohibited a full court from ever meeting, nor is the law said so, nor that it should not be over a certain thing. We have spelled it out. If you, in your wisdom, which is the Supreme Court of Pakistan, considers to constitute a full court, so be it. So why could it not be resolved simply by saying this?
That's right.
But can the whole point is that it's a substantive right, access to justice. So the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, can say, too bad to your access to justice and substantive right. In our wisdom, the full court will sit, which means whatever we decide, no appeal against that. So the question is that, can the Supreme Court do that? When the law provides a substantive right, can the Supreme Court deny that right? Or when you deny that right, there is no issue with it, so we, in our wisdom, can decide that? And that goes to the whole point of this law, कि आपने कोई wisdom को question किया है, अभी यहाँ पे कोई problem नहीं हो रही wisdom के साथ.
Let me just briefly respond to this in addition to what my Lord the Chief Justice has just observed. This situation of this sort, and I'd come to what Justice Munir has observed, this situation could also have, a similar situation could have arisen in these proceedings. For example, if somebody had, let's say, committed a judicial contempt in these proceedings, hypothetically, what would have happened? Now, it had to go before some judge. Now, if it had, because it had happened before the entirety of full court, it could not possibly go before an
That's not a vested right, right?
I'm coming to it.
Right of appeal is a vested substantive right.
I'm coming to it.
You think, are you Attorney General Sahab? I'm sorry to interrupt you. आप contempt of court, ये वकील या पार्टी का right है to commit contempt.
तो आप डायरेक्ट एग्जांपल देते हैं ना, अटॉर्नी जनरल आप डायरेक्ट एग्जांपल देते हैं कि ये केस इस केस की अपील कहाँ जाएगी. आप मफरूजों पे क्यों चल रहे हैं? ये भी तो हम केस सुन ही नहीं रहे ना. कोई ना कोई हमारे फैसले से खुश नहीं होगा, शायद सब ना खुश हों, हमें नहीं पता. उनकी राइट ऑफ अपील तो है ही नहीं. तो ये कानून ने कहाँ कहा है कि हर केस में अपील होगी? उन्होंने कहा एक किस्म के केसेस में जहाँ कम है वहाँ अपील होगी, राइट ऑफ अपील. कानून ये नहीं कह रहा है कि कानून ने उधर गए ही नहीं है, कानून उस जगह गए ही नहीं है.
Let's read section 5. Please read it to see कि कानून क्या कह रहा है और किसको राइट दे रहा है. पढ़ें please section 5.
An appeal shall lie within 30 days from an order of bench exercising jurisdiction under clause 3 of article
184(3) की अपील लाई करेगी. इसमें तो कोई हमें confusion नहीं है ना.
It shall be read, will be may. It's very simple. I mean, why do we have to? I mean, it's we have done it in so many cases.
One submission to this.
Again, let me make one question to you. The fact that in this case, the full court is hearing the virees. In this case, if the law is struck down, बात खत्म हो जाती है. मैं section 5 If section 5, if the law is declared intra vires, I would find it some rather odd for a petitioner to say, I exercise the right of appeal under section 5 for a declaration that the law including section 5 is ultra vires. So this particular case is an exception, because here the very vires of that act are under attack, including section 5. इधर वो नहीं बात apply कर सकती. बात हो रही है if this law survives challenge, तो फिर
जो सवाल है सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स और इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ जुडिशरी का कि आपने एक मैक्सिमम कैप लगा दिया जी 7 से ज़्यादा नहीं सुन सकते क्योंकि आपने एक सब्सटैंटिव वेस्टेड राइट दिया हुआ है उसको किस तरह कोई कोर्ट एक किसी का राइट है वो टेक अवे कर ले बाय एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्ट इज दैट व्हाट यू आर आर्ग्यूइंग
लेट मी कन्फेस my mistake to constitute a full court. It should have been less than the half of the number of judges of the court, so the right of appeal, if the law was sustained, would have remained.
No, I said
let me finish my thought. Would have remained, so I am certainly guilty of that. But then I'm not alone in that. Then my colleague should not have sat in the bench at all. And it's so. When 8 of them, same question would have been, if this law be sustained, where will the right of appeal go? So that is not your fault. If at all a fault has been committed, I'm the first to accept my mistake to do this, but there was in need of transparency and in need of a demand, it was done, and nobody objected amongst my colleagues that the full court should not be constituted. Similarly, I assume that none of them objected when 8-member bench was constituted. There too, the right of appeal had disappeared. So effectively, that had become redundant. They should have said, no, we will not sit, let a lesser bench be constituted, because if this law is sustained, and if someone is aggrieved, where will his right of or her right of appeal go, or the government's right of appeal, or a political party's right of appeal. So इन मफरूजों से निकलें और conclude कीजिए, आगे खत्म करें, हमें सोचना भी है, लिखने भी दें.
Mr. Daniel, let me clarify for you. Mr. Daniel, this is not a mafruza. I have said that this particular case is a special case in the sense and for the reason the very vires of this law are under challenge. It is not possible that if this law is sustained for a party challenging the very vires of the law to say, I exercise the right of appeal under section 5 for a declaration that this right of appeal that I have exercised is ultra vires the constitution. That would be completely nonsense. I am speaking of the future. I'm not speaking of this case. Because here the vires are under attack.
My lord, my brief response is this.
Suppose अगर ये law sustain कर जाता है, तो this issue can be resolved in the full court meeting. रूल्स में हम बना देंगे कि कितने बेंचेस होने चाहिए या नहीं होने चाहिए. अगर फुल कोर्ट होगा
तो कुछ नहीं
बात है. इसमें मेरा रिस्पांस सिंपली पुट एंड आई कंक्लूड.
said, I mean, the law, through the rules, the law cannot be changed. That is your position.
So there is nothing that can be done. This issue, you see, this goes. If you flip it around, if you flip it around, and you don't see it as a vested right, because as in an opinion which has been given, it doesn't matter about the vested right. So we flip it around and we see it in the context of what can the court do and what can't the court do. So you have actually capped in order to ensure that the right is always given to a party who files 184(3) petition, you have ensured that a certain quantity se zyada badi bench nahi banegi, depending on the strength of the court. Now, is that not some sort of an intrusion on how the court is to work? I mean, is that not something that the court has to decide based on factors that the court understands best?
No, I don't know.
Whether this precludes the other part of the judges not to hear the matter. The matter was heard by some judges in the first instance, then it was heard by the other judges in the second instance.
In practical,
the entire judges have heard the matter.
And I think it is this right. I think it is a right being conferred on. And I had briefly shown your lordships that
why are you putting it on us? Why are you putting it on us? Either you say yes, please. There is a right. You cannot now deny anyone this right. Don't tell us that you have hope and faith. Please do that accordingly. Please be precise in what you want.
Let me make your life easy. I put it upon myself. Let's end it. I take responsibility. Let's move forward. You've concluded the case or not?
I have, okay, my lord. And I just say this.
So I first of all, let me compliment the petitioners who have fought valiantly to sustain my powers and and you and the others who want to undermine them. So, but thank you very much for remaining good humor till the very end, despite some very difficult questions. And if we have said anything, or any one of us, which may have upset anyone, we certainly did not intend to do so. Sometimes in the heat of battle, things are said which are not really, don't mean anything. So let us end in good humor. And does it conclude the matter, or is there anything left for us to say or do?
5 minutes, just 2 very quick points.
5 minutes, certainly. Aye.
Grateful, my lord.
Aye,
Grateful
thank
for
you.
your time. Thank you for your patient hearing.
My lord, on a very lighter side, the powers which have been exercised in promulgating this law are 1752 say so. It doesn't say so that 142 has been used, read with entry 55. So my humble submission is that discussion on entry 55 is little superfluous. And if your lordship may allow me to refer to 175.2,
by now we've memorized it.
We've memorized it. I know.
Make the point.
I know. The point is that, and I think I would be able to make a better point if I just read, because it has to be read together.
The right of reply, no?
Very quickly. There shall be a Supreme Court of Pakistan, a High Court for each province, for Islamabad, and such other courts. So the provision is using Supreme Court and the High Court and other courts separately. And if you read 175.2, no court shall have jurisdiction save as is or may be conferred on it by the Constitution or by any other law. So when 1752 is read along with 1751, the word court does not include the Supreme Court. And if I may refer to your lordship's dissenting opinion in the Rawalpindi High Court Bar Association case, where interpreting various provisions of the Constitution, it has been concluded when the Constitution uses the words any court, that does not include the Supreme Court. So my humble submission would be that 1752, they cannot draw the power to legislate for the purposes of this law for Supreme Court, relying on 175.
Point taken.
And your lordship, again on a lighter tone, there is a world of difference between will of the people versus the will of the parliament or will of the government. So that aspect has to be taken into consideration. And your lordship,
No, sorry, there isn't any. The preamble starts that the will of the people will be expressed through their chosen representatives, which is the parliament.
That is what my point is. The chosen, and then modifying the Constitution by the will of the chosen representative has to be by 2/3 majority. So that is what the principal point is. And your lordship, again, another point in the same context is that when the Constitution has intended to confer an appeal right, that has been specifically provided by the Constitution, and there is an appeal against in the case of Article 63.
Right of reply पे रहिए ना.
जी my lord, यही
वो points आप दोबारा.
My lord, वो मैंने पहले नहीं raise किया था, because this is a specific provision, the specific point that has to be taken into consideration. So these are the two major points that I just thought would be relevant, because under 63A, Article 5, 2035 and 2123, there is a right of appeal which the Constitution has provided. So when we read 185, there is no right of appeal which is specifically conferred, or 184. And my lord, last point very quickly is that there has been no answer or no argument to counter the point that this committee by section 2 and 3 has virtually modified Article 1843 provision. And in fact, the law itself, as your lordship was on a lighter tone saying, that if the Honorable Chief Justice doesn't fix the case, then the law itself does not provide that the committee, in how many days the committee will decide that the bench will be constituted, in how many days the committee can also likewise sit down on this. So this law has to really be seen from that perspective. And I think the solution lies in your lordship looking at the rules themselves rather than any outside body. I'm very grateful, my lord, for
जी आबिद साहब,
जी आपकी इजाज़त से सर, फेडरल शरीयत कोर्ट की जो बात की अटॉर्नी जनरल साहब ने और माय लॉर्ड जस्टिस मंदोखेल ने, एक प्रोविजन फेडरल शरीयत कोर्ट के चैप्टर्स में कर दी जिसकी वजह से रूल मेकिंग पावर को सब्जेक्ट टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एंड लॉ नहीं किया गया। आर्टिकल 203A, ये देख लीजिए सर, बिकॉज इस पर सारी शरीयत कोर्ट के मुख्तलिफ प्रोविजंस की बात होती रही, लेकिन दिस इज अ वेरी क्रूशल 203A, capital A, my lord. The chapter starts 3A. The chapter 3A, 203A. Am I with your worship, sir?
Yeah.
The provisions of this chapter shall have effect notwithstanding anything contained in the constitution.
Yeah.
तो ये पहले ही कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को, दैट्स वाई जो रूल्स
किसने बनाया
सर वो
कह दीजिए ना
सर, लेकिन
हिम्मत कर ले
बिल्कुल बनाया, एक मार्शल लॉ के जमाने बना नहीं, लेकिन सर लेकिन इसको अपहोल्ड किया और
इसको आप कह रहे हैं सुपरा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बनाया।
मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि 18वीं तरमीम भी तो पार्लियामेंट ने सबने मिलकर बनाई, उसको